I find today's video quite important. There are so many wireless transmission systems out in the market today, and it's hard to choose whether on your budget or the features that you want and this, that, and the other. I personally use Teradek and DJI systems, and I highly recommend them. But in this review and comparison, I'm going to show you the strengths and weaknesses of both systems so you can choose which will be best for you. And I'll tell you what my preference is as well. I am affiliated with both DJI and Teradek, which is kind of funny, but Teradek did approach me, wanted to make this video. No money was involved, but they did send over the products, and I've had these products over the last year, but you know how I'm going to do things. I'm going to tell it like it is. So just to give a little bit of context of who I am and the perspective I'm kind of taking for this comparison, I'm an AC as well as a full-time commercial GP. And those two worlds, you need a monitoring system for both for your camera as well as pulling critical focus. And I've used both on various occasions for pulling focus. I prefer the Teradek because of the zero latency, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Now, just so I want to say this too, I'm not going to be testing the distance. I know that's something that a lot of reviewers tend to do when they get a transmission system. They test how far it goes, especially with DJI because it's touted with, the 20,000 feet or 10,000 feet for the SDRs. The Teradeks are rated at 750 and 1,500 feet. Rarely am I ever that far away from the camera, or for a camera operator, I'm having my monitor. It all depends on line of sight and the interference and things like that. So there's a lot of workarounds you need to consider when you're dealing with range. So I'm not going to even worry about that. I'm going to be focusing on the practicality of these systems, the tools that it offers, latency, stability, all those things that actually you use the most when using two systems like this. A few things I actually learned as I was making this video. There's going to be always some slight delay coming from the SDI port or the HDMI port going to the transmission, going out your monitor. There's always going to be some level of delay. So keep that in mind as you're seeing this test as well. Typically delay is measured in milliseconds. Speaking of milliseconds, here's a test before the test. To give us a baseline, on the left side of the image, you have the SDI coming out of the camera directly to the monitor. This gives us a baseline with the direct feed from camera to monitor. On the right side, you have the camera SDI connected to the transmitter connected to the monitor. Feel free to pause at any time. This is a similar test, but with the HDMI. This is the A750 connected to the XH2S. On the left side, you have the HDMI to the monitor, and the right side, you have the HDMI from the camera to the monitor to the transmitter on the right. Pause at any time. I found it much easier to understand if there's something moving in the frame, that you can kind of really understand what's going on. You can visually see what's going on. So totally not scientific, but it's totally fine in this case, I think. But overall, there's going to be some level of delay for any wireless transmission system. It's really how consistent is it and how well does it maintain its claimed latency as you're using it. Also, this is the perfect environment that these devices are going to be operating in. I'm in rural Indiana in my barn with no other interference other than Wi-Fi and a few computer devices. So keep that in mind. They're going to perform at its peak. Okay, this is the SDR. All right, so as you saw, the one-to-one testing looks, pretty good from both systems. Obviously, this is in a perfect environment, like I mentioned before. However, I do want to point out a few things with the DJI system and how it actually operates. Now, if you want to get the best picture out of the DJI system, you have to be in HD mode, which the bitrate is set to 40 megabits per second. You will have a better video quality, but the latency will increase. On the flip side, if you want to have multiple receivers, you have to enable broadcast mode. So anything that's more than 1 to 2 receivers to a transmitter, the broadcast mode lowers the bitrate to 20 megabytes per second, which in effect lowers the image quality and still adds a bit of delay. Now, on the other side, the A750 and the Bolt 6 system, they don't have this issue. You don't have to sacrifice image quality over latency because they're not tied to each other like the DJI system.
All right, so I moved this portion into my house just because there's a little bit more interference with Wi-Fi's, other electronics, cell phones, laptops, and this, that, and the other. And so I'm in my nook, and then the camera's upstairs in my office. And so, yeah, this is kind of take a run at it. This is 3-to-1 with the Teradek, and they are all running smoothly. Here's a real-time image as well as the side-by-sides. And you can see the latency is holding up quite nice. Now moving over to DJI, this was interesting as well. I only have a 2-to-1 system just because the SDRs cannot communicate with the Pro version. So 2-to-1, but I had to put these in broadcast mode. And as you can see, the picture is there, but it starts to get pixelated and blocky. And I've had this happen multiple times on different shoots when I'm using 2-to-1. And it's just not ideal for someone who wants to pull focus. So for me, this is kind of like a bummer. Here it is side by side.
So the Teradek system has the upper hand. The latency stays consistent and the image doesn't diminish with 2 or more receivers connected to a transmitter. Now, another aspect I want to mention, and it kind of bothers me when I see other reviewers talk about wireless transmission systems. They only talk about it in the sense of a 1-to-1 system, which lacks the understanding of how a system like this or any system should scale when it's actually on a larger set. And don't worry, I've been there too. I had one way of talking about wireless transmission systems, but now that I've been doing way more commercials and being on different sets, I understand the importance of having higher quality products on set because there's an expectation of what it can deliver. A lot of these budget options are okay for the most part, but there's always a sacrifice. And this is where I think Teradek, hangs his hat on of not trying to sacrifice anything because they know the importance of getting a clear image and critical shots. And that's way more important than having the ease of use of using Wi-Fi and putting it on your phone and being able to do that. That's pretty much the solo creator's journey, which, is handy at times when I need it. But if you step into the professional world, you're going to need a much better system than that. But the one feature that takes the cake for Teradek is the ability to be on a 6 gigahertz frequency. And let me explain a little bit of what that is. So let's say you have a 5-lane highway. This is your 5 gigahertz workflow, which most devices like the DJI Pro and the SDR can operate between 2.4 gigahertz all the way up to 5.8 gigahertz. So let's say, you're in a high congested area with a lot of different types of frequencies happening. So it gets so cluttered. Imagine it's like your traffic basically. The 6 gigahertz is your fast lane or the carpool lane. It's going to allow you to get over and get a better data transfer, data stream, better frequency, better reliability, and it bypasses all that extra congestion. Hope that makes sense. My buddy Dan, he asked me to come out to help him on a project, so I AC'd for him. And I brought in my follow focus system, I brought in my transmission and everything, and we were in a hospital. I was running into issues very quickly, very early on. It was just dropping feed, as well as my focus hand unit would not connect to my the motor, so I had to pull off the barrel on the camera, and that was, we were able to manage, but it was a way harder, and I had to look on the picture on the camera while he was looking at it as he was the DP. I think the solution to that would have been maybe just finding a fixed frequency, because being in the hospital, you're having a ton of traffic, a ton of congestion, and I think it was just getting tripped up on figuring out what it can do, where it can bounce. So I think while it was bouncing to different frequencies, that's when things start to drop out, and then that's when we're having the issues. So that's not ideal. I probably need to troubleshoot that again, just test it somewhere in the high congested area like a hospital. On the flip side, I recently went out to help Ryan. You probably guys know him. You see, he's a familiar face. Great DP, and I admire watching him work and working with his friend, director Tom. They allowed me to come out. They rented a few pieces of gear from me, lighting, and as well as I brought the Teradek Bolt 6. They had it on the Arri Alexa LF. And so, big shout out to Christian Collins. It was my first time actually meeting him. Dude's a legend. Great meeting him on set, and it was really fun to see his rig builds. Crazy. He's known for having these red eye ratwork builds and all different types of cameras. But everyone who I met, all you guys, you were great, really great to kind of chill and hang with as we were just kind of watching people would work and whatnot. So anyway, I get ahead of myself. So the environment we were filming in, it was a gymnasium in the middle of the city. And, with that, you have Wi-Fi, you have cellular interference, you have, security, you have all these other things, whatever the city was happening to. So you still had a very congested area.
I meant to mention that we had a 3-up on this. We had a client monitor, director's monitor, first AC monitor. That's for camera A, so you had the 1 to 3, and then camera B was just a 1 to 1.
It ran smoothly. There was really no hiccups. Like I was saying earlier, a lot of times a commercial sets like this, you are going to be right next to or near the camera while you're filming. So yeah. Let me just wrap this up. And I'm not trying to bash DJI, but there is a clear distinction for me when dealing with a system like this. And this is why I will pick the Teradek over the DJI system. Another thing to note that the SDRs do not integrate with the DJI Transmission Pro versions. They are basically a separate product. And I think that misses mark. I mentioned this in a video before. The A750 and the Bolt 6, they can communicate to each other. So if you can kind of move through having a budget option and going into the more pro option, you can still keep the transmitter and the receiver and they will work together flawlessly. So it's just, it's a matter of what are your needs, what is your budget. But for me, moving forward, any high-end production, I'm going to be using Teradek no matter what. So let me know in the comments below what you think, and let me know if this was helpful or not. If there's anything I missed, that'd be great too. So catch you guys on the next one. Peace.